Well, horror is something that evolves with whatever's happening in the real world at the time. If you look historically in horror, in the 50s it was fear of atomic energy. In the 70s it was very much a reaction to Vietnam. Kind of in the post-2000 and the kind of post-9/11, everyone had fear of torture and kind of the war going on in Iraq. So whatever's happening in the world, often horror movies will reflect that. And not in obvious ways. It's not like, oh, this is, it's not like a horror film about ISIS would perform necessarily, but ISIS is something that is terrifying to people, and they don't know how to stop it and don't know how to control it, and fear, like, where is it going to spread? What is it going to lead to next? And you're not allowed to be scared in society. When we show up at work, we can't be scared, and when we're at home, we can't be scared. So really, movie theaters and sporting events are the only time that you're allowed to go, ah! And it's okay. And actually, when
roller coasters.
And roller coasters, yeah. when you go to a movie theater and see, a horror film like the ones that Jason produces and does exceptionally well, it's an incredible release.
I think that's very accurate. I think horror, it does evolve. I think there was a big supernatural push in the last that started with Paranormal Activity and I think we're kind of towards the end of that. I think we're getting bloodier again, which is fun. But it does go in waves. It's kind of interesting.
It's also interesting, Jason produces a movie like Ouija, and often the culture will reflect the movies and the movies will reflect the culture. So Ouija comes out and it's a massive hit, and then it comes out to home video, it's an even bigger hit. And then Charlie Charlie starts, which is the internet version of Ouija. So then you see that will somehow get filtered into some screenwriter's imagination, and then something from a movie somehow gets filtered into the culture. But what I think Jason has really done more effectively than anyone, maybe since Roger Corman in the 50s and 60s, is to find a system and a mechanism to get top filmmakers and top writers and top actors to come in and make smart, elevated genre movies at a consistent level. Because as you can see with TV shows like Walking Dead, horror television is exploding. But to have that kind of consistency, to have that big screen, there's really no match for that big movie theater screaming experience. And what Jason and everyone at Blumhouse have done is really create an incredible system for writers, directors, producers to bring projects and really get them out there to the masses. So I think it's a very, very exciting time. That's why I'm excited to host this panel about Blumhouse, because the truth is it's not just Jason. Jason is smart enough to put an amazing team around him, and we're going to talk about that team today.
Well, I think and obviously Eli's movies are a big part of that. And I think the key is, and what the panel is about, is that it really just it's not just me. There's a pretty big company that we have, and a lot of and I really believe in crossover. Like the post-production guy reads scripts, and the production person does. I really believe that everyone should have a voice, and so I encourage that. But I think most of all, I think Hollywood typically looks at success and tries to emulate it. So every time there's a big hit, there are 10 meetings in Hollywood or 50 meetings in Hollywood. It's like, where's our one of these? And the benefit of making low budget movies is we can do the opposite. So, and that's because our budgets are low. We don't take big risks. So I really try and push everyone to say, what's new, what's different. Sometimes the movies catch, and sometimes they don't, but at least we're going in, we're trying to do something different, and I think the audience, they might not articulate that, but I think they pick up on it. Well, I think to what Eli said, the scariest things on the screen are things that are relatable. So I think taking a step further to what Eli said is we look for what's going on out there in the world, and in addition to looking for new things, we look for things that are relatable. So I always, when we're deciding what movie to do, we always also talk about how we're going to sell the movie, and usually with a horror movie that goes to putting someone in a very relatable circumstance, with an exceptional situation, which relates to current events and relates to what's going on in the world. So we try and keep the movies current, which I think keeps most of them very scary.
That's the zone I live in. Yeah. I live in that zone. That's like, oh, anytime I write a script, generally people's reaction is, you can't make this. You can't do this. And then when I show it to an audience, people are like, no one will see this movie. And then you have to get it in the trailers, and people are like, no one's going to see this. Like, every single movie I have ever done, people either at the script stage, watching the edit, even seeing it at a festival with an audience, even like people are like, you can't, this is too much. And that's the zone that I go, okay, we've got something.
Eli does that definitely more than we
I love
do.
it. I love to push it right up to the boundary of like, oh
yeah.
God, is he really gonna, oh my God, did you, people, because I remember that feeling in junior high and like Monday morning when you'd come into school, like pre-internet and all that, and you'd be like, oh my God, there was that scene. And then even before cable, when you were a kid, it was always some kid's older brother that had seen Last House on the Left or Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like, yeah, and then they rip the guts out, and you're like, ah, or Dawn of the Dead. So I always wanted to make those movies that had that little bit of sizzle and danger, that even if people hadn't seen them, they're like, well, I can't see that. That's just too much. But that's my personal taste. I think what Jason does exceptionally well is that he obviously has incredible taste, and that ranges from Paranormal Activity to The Jinx and Whiplash, The Normal Heart, but he never lets his taste stand in the way. He trusts his judgment, but he also trusts the people around him. So that, because you're not, like I'm a director, so the movies that I'm making are very much the films that I want to see for a specific audience, but Jason does an amazing job of really making a wide array of different types of horror, some of which is The Purge and some of which is The Jinx, which, terrifies me, but in a different way. You
don't decide.
You don't decide. It calls you. It's like
it calls you.
You can't. These voices are in your head. You got to get them out somehow. I mean, I think of horror as like your musical taste. Like you don't control your musical taste. You hear a band and you love it. You don't control what your favorite color is. You don't control what your favorite food is. Those are your tastes. That's what you like. And for me, I've just always been true to my taste. It's not that that's all I want to see. I mean, I love Willy Wonka, I love Yellow Submarine, I like Goodfellas, I like a whole range of stuff. But the horror movies, the movies like there is like some incredible thrill, some deep-seated need. I love telling ghost stories as a kid. And when you have sleepovers with your friends, or I went to overnight camp, when you're around the campfire, everybody says, what's a scary story? If it's Three-Fingered Willie or Cropsy or whatever it is. And even Grimm's fairy tales are very violent. They're children being baked in ovens. So when kids want to hear stories, kids want to hear very violent, scary stories. And I always think of horror movies as fairy tales for adults. I think that adults have fears in our lives that we have to bury, we have to suppress, and when you sit there, it basically says for 90 minutes, you're allowed to be terrified. I hear from soldiers all the time, people that were in Iraq, they told me that the Hostel movies were the most popular movies in the military base, and I think, I asked them, like, why would you want to watch such a violent movie when you're seeing, and they go, well, we're not allowed to be scared. And you're seeing people's faces blown off and you have to shut down and be a machine about it. But those feelings do get processed somewhere and they have nowhere to be let out. So when you put it on for a bunch of soldiers, it basically says, you're not cowards, you're still brave soldiers, but for this period of time, you are allowed to let it out. And it's a very cathartic experience.
Well, to me, I always think that you shouldn't, I'm a big believer in not waiting for the industry to let you direct your movie. So if you want to direct horror movies, you should be directing 5-minute shorts. You should be writing them to places that you can shoot in your front yard or your bedroom or wherever, and casting your friends and make them as scary as you want. I think if you do that 10 times, if you make 10 5-minute shorts, one of them is going to be really scary and you'll go on from there. I think the key is to not wait to get permission to do it, but to go do it you don't have to spend any money at all, but technology is such now that you can really do it on your own. And I think too often people make a mistake and they wait. And they shouldn't. They should just go make stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree with Jason. I mean, Paranormal Activity is the best. I mean, look what that movie started, and that was Oren Peli and $50,000 I think total.
15.
Or 15,000.
The first version.
Yeah, the first version was Oren Peli with $15,000 and a camera, and it's literally baby powder and a door creaking open. And it's such a patient movie. I remember I got a screener of that movie when we were shooting Inglourious Bastards, and I was in Berlin watching it by myself, and I was all freaked out, and I gave the DVD to Quentin, and I was like, I just saw the scariest movie. And the next day he's like, that was the freakiest movie, I couldn't sleep at all last night. Like, both of us who've seen everything, we're making this hardcore like war movie, we were freaked out. And that's what's exciting for horror fans. Horror fans love to discover the next one.
And making horror is not expensive. You can't make a disaster movie or a period movie. There are a lot of things you can't do without money. Horror, you really can.